Good evening, everybody. Andrew here with another episode of Fresh Brewed Kentucky Politics. As always, feel free to support us. You can check us out on the shop there in Lexington. Come on out. It was a warm day today. Don't worry, we have iced coffee. If you've ever had never had an ice pour over before, it might be the best iced coffee you've ever had. On top of that, you can always check us out online. I'm going to drop a link for you guys there. And that link right there, you can follow that to our merch shop. You can follow that to our donation link, as well as some petitions we're pushing for right now. Petitions are just important because it's a demonstrable proof of a large number of pissed off people, which isn't necessarily important right away, but it's not that hard to do it. What's important here is that we use that to show them the amount of people that disagree with what they're doing. And so in turn, we're able to mobilize those individuals. So get on there, fill out those petitions on that link, check out the merch shop, donate to us if you like what we're doing, share what we're doing. By the way, this is available in podcast form on Spotify, and you can follow that link there to find that. So getting into the news of the day, and there is a lot of disappointing news. A legislator, I wish I could say I am surprised. I am not. It's kind of expected at this point because they're still playing by, I think, some weird rules / I think there's maybe some punitive things going on here, but we'll kind of get into it. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the schools before we get into HB 208, which passed today. So first, the Lexington, we've got another 42 kids being quarantined, not because they got COVID, but because somebody in the room tested positive for COVID, I guess. One person has to wonder at some point, is this going to turn into a situation where the parents start looking around and be like, all right, who tested their kid for COVID? Which one of you guys tested your kid from COVID that made all the rest of these kids come home from 10 days out of nowhere? I don't even think this follows necessarily CDC guidelines. I believe it is only the kids they've come in close contact with. I thought the reason why they're 6 feet apart and they're being potted off and they have to wear masks all the time, they've got their dividers up, is so we don't have to send all the kids home the minute somebody tests positive for COVID. That appears to not be the case, though. Once again, they're just sending the kids home back and forth. And, quite honestly, it doesn't make a lot of sense. The numbers are quite clear, and I do not say this in a joking manner. I do not say this as hyperbole. Literally, COVID is not a risk to children. It just isn't. There's been one school-age death in the entire state, and I'm informed this individual was recovering from cancer. They had a lot of immune compromise issues. They've been dealing with sicknesses for a long time. This individual probably wouldn't even have been in school in the first place. It is irrational fear that is driving this, and it's very irrational. And also, in a way, too, and I understand this kind of argument that maybe the parents are worried about catching it and passing it on and everything else. One is the proof on whether or not kids can even pass COVID seems pretty scant. I haven't seen personally a story about a teacher definitely getting COVID from a student and then dying. That's not really a common thing. I believe there's been schools open all over the world, and they just can't really find a super great connection between children spreading COVID, as far as I know. But yet, we act with an irrational fear, and this irrational fear creates us doing some crazy things. One of the things today, and we tweeted and we Facebook posted this, is we're seeing parents that were advised by some health department to quarantine their children if somebody in their classroom tests positive for COVID. So that is resulting in these parents literally locking their kids alone in a room or downstairs or something and quarantining them off from everybody else for 10 to 14 days. That is clearly not good for your child. It is an irrational fear. So if you have a 10-year-old child, chances are you are probably, and I'm not here to offend anybody, if you're older than this and you got a 10-year-old child, good on you. This is not meant to make you feel bad. But you're probably not over the age of 40. You're just probably not. And you know what? Quite literally, the risk factor for you far exceeds the benefit of being with your child through a difficult time and not creating the kind of damage that would go on a kid to just suddenly be locked in a room for like 10 days, 14 days. What kind of damage does that do to a kid's psyche? What does that make them think of you as a parent? What does that make them think of the society they live in if they're being locked alone in a room for 10 days, 14 days at a time. That's insane. And that is crazy to me. And I don't understand why we think this is okay and why we're doing it, but we're seeing people do it. And it is proof that these COVIDians, as I call them, these people who worship this idea of COVID being a super extreme risk, these COVIDians sit there and they have let this fear consume their lives. They literally think if you're walking around without a mask, you are literally killing grandma. Not thinking to yourself, hey, if I'm not wearing a mask, I probably haven't been wearing a mask for a long time. I'm probably not specifically very careful. And if COVID is as spreads as quickly as you think it does and everything else, chances are I've already had COVID, already been over it. Right? If you're super at risk, you should be getting your vaccines now. Why do you care so much about what other people are doing at this point? Case count is dropping like a crazy amount, but yet we're seeing parents think this is the second coming of the plague. It just isn't. It just isn't. Yes, it's highly infectious, but it's not actually all that deadly. And we're acting in an extremely irrational way when it comes to children and young adults that is being beat into us by this media. I mean, look, we have our governor going on every day at 4 and listing off, well, these are the people that died today. And I remember once he was going through a story. He's telling this story about this person who died, and it was terrible and it was sad. And he gets to the end, she goes, and she died from COVID at 102. And listen, I'm sure she had a lot of life left in her. I'm not saying she didn't, but she still is 102. And that is nothing more than fear-mongering to pull at our heartstrings to control what we're doing. And that just isn't okay. And we can't keep letting that occur and happen with no repercussions, because we're starting to see the strains on society as far as it goes when we see parents locking away their kids in a room for no reason at all other than they think that that's what they're supposed to do. And not only that, but it goes to wonder, how easy to be controlled are we? Earlier, I was talking to one of my friends, and he goes, I thought COVID lockdowns would be over by like June. I fully underestimated the amount of abuse of personal rights and liberties Americans would take on before they started fighting. Now, me and him are both pretty liberty guys. We're liberty fighters in the way. We dedicate a lot to it. We'll kind of get into some of that, but there's a lot of risk in what we do. And to pretend for 1 second we're not up against a punitive establishment is just incorrect. We are. If you think for 1 second I'm not going to get audited on my taxes this year, you're wrong. If you think for 1 second my licensing process won't take longer than everybody else's from here on out, you're wrong. If you think I will not constantly be a target of government action as far as it goes, you're just wrong. That is what it will be. And so, these are things we put on the line, but he thought it would be over. I thought it would be over in June, July, but I've underestimated it. And what we're seeing now is literally you're throwing all your parental instincts out the window because somebody told you lock your kid in a room because you thought to yourself, yeah, that's a good idea. I don't care if my kid was literally had the bubonic plague and I was guaranteed to die. I would be in that room next to him through it all, and I would be fine with that because it's worth it to me, because I don't want my child to go through something like that for 2 weeks. Especially not if it is as deadly as you think it is, then you should be thinking in your mind, my kid might die. This might be his last 2 weeks. I'm this afraid. I'm willing to lock him in a room. And you're not willing with that fear in your mind. You're putting yourself above your child to the point that you will lock them in a room and you will stay on the outside of it because you're worried and you're so afraid of COVID because you just aren't paying attention to the numbers where you think this is going to kill people like a massive degree that you're not willing to be with your child. So basically, what if that is that kid's last 2 weeks? I don't know. Maybe I'm weird. Maybe I just don't value my life as much as other people do. Or maybe I recognize that my life is only important for as long as I'm standing for something. And, one of those things is being a great father to my son. And if I can't be a great father to my son as a parent with my life, then it's not worth living. Maybe I'm a little bit weird in that way, but I don't know. That's just where I fall on that. And this is getting crazy. And it's not helping when they keep sending these kids home from Lexington schools, batches of 40s, and there's 40 last, and it's just terrible. And we've got to stop doing it. We've got to stop doing this. This is doing nothing but fear-mongering more and more. It is not the end of the world if a kid catches COVID. Kid catches COVID, he tests positive, you send him home. That's it. That's it. We don't need to quarantine everybody else. This is ridiculous. It is getting quite ridiculous. It is completely unscientific. And you can't tell me the people that walk around with masks on their face while they're alone outside and the people that are locking their kids in a room are getting it right. And meanwhile, I'm getting it wrong. I just refuse to believe that. I just can't believe that. Here's my rant about COVID for the day for you guys. Now let's go on to some legislation updates as far as it goes. So, SB1 and SB2 and HB1 news. Judge Shepard ruled at the last minute to stay those. Now, I'm going to throw my normal disclaimer as I get into the legal weeds. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not advising you of anything. I'm just talking. I'll talk about what we're doing, and we'll see how you feel about it. So, SB1 and SB2 would have ended all the governor's mandates. They would have ended all of them because he couldn't call an emergency without calling in the legislator, and the legislators would have had to vote that there was an emergency. However, Judge Shepard put a stay on the law. As I've covered before, it's really weird how this is happening. So what normally happens when a situation occurs where a law gets passed and let's say the governor disagrees with it. So a law gets passed, governor disagrees with it. What's going on there is the governor then will either not enforce the law, in which case now the AG, the legislator, or even a citizen, if it somehow is affecting them, can sue the governor to enforce the law. And at that point, it can be ruled on whether or not it's constitutional. Or if a law is passed and the governor is breaking that law that gets passed, the AG then comes in and can sue the governor, or whoever the governor is breaking the law against, a citizen, can then come in and sue the governor to stop them from doing it. That's how it normally works. It is very weird, it's very odd for a governor to get a lawsuit and a restraining order against the legislators and LRC. And the reason why that's weird and strange is because they don't actually do anything. See, the law was already turned into the Secretary of State. It was already signed off as far as that goes. So it is a law, and they don't do anything past that. So what would normally have had happen, so let's say what should have had happen with SB1 and SB2 and HB1 is laws get passed, somebody breaks, or the governor, so in this case, the governor still keeps making mandates. And so somebody comes in and he tries to enforce those mask mandates. And then, so let's take a mandate. Let's take a capacity mandate. And so he tries to pass that mandate. It can't be enforced. So he tries to come in and would say suspend my license for it. And I keep operating like I did before. And then there's a lawsuit, a civil case. And in that civil case, we say, well, listen, SB1, SB2, and HB1 say I can do this. And then at that point, that judge can rule on its constitutionality, and then if we don't like the way it went on either side, they can appeal that up to higher courts, and that's the way it works its way through the courts normally. We're in a weird territory here. So it is of a type of opinion of mine. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving you legal advice, that I am not named as a party in this restraining order. SB1, SB2, and HB1 are law. They've been signed into law. And so if I was to operate according to SB1, SB2, and HB1 as a business or as an individual, one would say, if they tried to enforce against me, I could defend myself using SB1, SB2, and HB1 in stating that I am not a party to that lawsuit. Therefore, it does not affect me. This is the laws I follow. And then at that point, that judge can then rule on its constitutionality. Now, this would create a constitutional crisis because you'd have two laws in state court, two cases in state court about the same law working on whether or not it's constitutional. However, one's on enforcement side, one's on another side, and it'd get very interesting. This would be a very interesting thing to see how it plays out. Now, me personally, as you guys know, and I've stated, as videos have stated, as everything else, we are set up and we follow HB1 as far as it goes as a law, as a business. We have our HB1 notifications up. They're on our website even. You can go see our HB1 plan. Our HB1 plan is posted on our door. Our rules for our HB1 plan are posted on our door. They're posted on our website. That is what we follow. That is what we do. And as far as it goes, now, they haven't came out and bothered us at all about it, but also we are Brood. And one of the things they don't want to do is come out and bother us and create another media storm crap show that they went through last time, where we literally just say, nah, kick rocks, we don't care. We're following the laws that were passed by the people who were dutifully elected to pass them. And, see where that goes and see how that goes as far as everything there. Now, That's what we would normally do. And the legislators, if they really want to kick that up and even out that battlefield as far as it goes, they would pass HB 360. HB 360 would stop the governor from being able to take licenses. So even if he could go to court and civilly try to stop me still, but he can't pull my liquor license. He couldn't pull my food license for doing it. So I wouldn't be subjected to punitive attacks as far as that goes. I wouldn't be subjected to it. Now, the problem is they haven't done that. And if this law isn't passed by next Friday, it is no longer veto proof. And that's important to remember is this next Friday's date. And I'll come around to that here in a second. Is veto proof. Now, sorry. It won't be veto proof, and therefore it won't be able to help us in the battlefield as we now are trying to step it to the governor to fight to keep our businesses running through how they should be by laws that are passed. Because you have to ask yourself this question. You can't pass laws even from people you've elected. What do we have left as citizens to do for recourse, right? So we've tried impeachment, right? We've passed laws. We elected people who passed laws that then made laws that now a judge is coming in saying, no, the legislation can't pass laws after they've already passed laws. Like, what can we do as a people then? You're really tying our hands here, and that creates bad situations. We need to boil this down and start getting these branches to act the way they're supposed to. We need to not turn up the temperature in this country. And what ends up happening, if you're saying our legislators can't pass laws even, that turns up the temperature. It just does. And at a certain point, too, you have to wonder, why is he doing it? I mean, at a certain point, you have to recognize the people you quote-unquote govern literally don't want you to do this anymore. They've elected a supermajority of people who all ran on this idea that they're going to rein you in. They're not really doing a very good job of it, as we'll talk about. But to rein you in, and then they pass these laws, and you're still fighting. You're literally fighting the people you're supposed to be governing. And this is ridiculous. This is the craziest thing in the world to me, but it's all about power. You cannot look at what Andy Beshear is doing and say it's not about anything more than wanting control. It's not even about safety anymore. I mean, the case count and the positivity rate has fallen at such a drastic amount. It's not even about that anymore. It's literally about trying to hold on to every ounce of power he has because he's a punitive tyrant, not that different than the legislators as we're about to get to. Because what we've seen from them today is a lot of very disappointing, bad bills rolling out of the legislature. So what we saw today was a passage of HB 208. All they did to change it was up the NTI requirement for being NTI only from 25 per 100,000 to 50 per 100,000, which is still below the 100 per 100,000 that a red zone makes for the CDC. That is still half the level for what the CDC calls a red zone. And yet they passed that. It's all they did. We've been calling about it. We've been emailing about it. I know they've been getting turned up. I know they've been getting hundreds upon hundreds of emails about it a day. They don't listen and they didn't care. The reason why they don't care and they don't listen right away, we still have to go through this quote-unquote process, whatever you want to call it, is because we have to voice it. So then when they don't do what we ask them to do, we can punish them by not electing them in again in the primaries. And you have to understand, these people don't listen to us because we don't get them elected. Okay, you've got a good number of people, you guys listening, you guys who follow this, you guys who share this with your friends and are paying attention are not the kind of people I'm talking about. The people I'm talking about are what I call the political NPCs. They're Democrats, they're Republicans, they don't pay any attention. They think Orange Man bad, or they think, Orange Man bad, or they think if there's an R next to their name, they're the best thing in the world since forever. So they're political NPCs, and all they do is show up in a general, and they hit D, and they hit R, and they walk their butts on out of there. That's all they do. And so that's not what gets them elected. What gets them elected in their minds is being able to get money in from leadership. And to point this out, only 19 out of 75 of the Republicans in the House had a primary opponent this last year. They do not right now feel that we the people get them elected. They feel leadership gets them elected, or the general leadership plan gets them elected. And so why is the leadership passing these really bad bills? Part of it is because they too are a little beholden to the teachers' unions as far as it goes. And I would love to see a bill, and if there was a person who would introduce a bill, I'd love nothing more than to end taxpayer-funded lobbying, basically meaning KEA or KDE, Kentucky Department of Education, can't have a lobbyist anymore. If they get a dime of tax dollars, just to include Planned Parenthood, they're not allowed to lobby anymore. I'd love nothing more than to have that bill out there. But anyways, so they are a little beholden to the unions. And quite frankly, they literally think they know best. They think, listen, those peons down there, the rabble, those idiots down there, those people who listen to Brood, or those people who listen to Chris Weiss, or these people who are in Let Them Learn sites that really want to get kids back to school, they don't matter. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know anything. We know what's best for them. And here's the bottom line. You don't know what's best. You're our servant. You're a public servant. You serve us. It is not about you knowing. You know who knows what's best for me? Me. Our founding fathers acknowledged that. They had a philosophy that the ultimate minority is the individual, right? Meaning that the minority the individual has to have the greatest amount of rights, because the majority will always try to take advantage of that minority, of the individual. And therefore, you can't tell me what is the best for me. I know what's best for me. You need to listen to your people. And when your people are calling in about something, that's when you listen to them. But they're not listening to us. They're listening to leadership. Leadership, I'm sure, has a great plan, and it's some sort of 4D chess where they still think this is not before 2020. Before 2020, I would agree that this general plan of what they're doing would work and has worked and would work because people don't pay attention. But it's not working. And part of the reason it's not working is because people are paying attention. You're getting called out for your BS. We know what you're doing. What you're doing is you're enabling terrible things to happen, and you're then going to turn around and try to blame it on Bashir. But you can't do that because we offered you an opportunity through impeachment. You are passing these laws that are allowing him to keep doing this, and quite frankly, we're not going to keep falling for this, and we're not going to. People are seeing through it, and you need to pay attention. This is the first time Kentucky's ever dealt with something called confrontational politics, but they're going to get a real crash course real quick. People are paying attention. 2020 woke people up. They didn't realize how much control the government could have over them, and this will never be the same thing. This will never be the same thing again. There are far less people. So what disappointing bills. We had HB208 pass, and of course, they ignored everything. Now, what's really concerning about it is it only sends this is bare minimum facts. First off, there's a lawsuit involving opening up the schools. That's now pretty much dead, so that tells you HB208 does. HB208 only requires kids to come back 2 out of 5 days a week. And, it's pretty unclear of if after this summertime, if they get to be... according to, so if you go into Section 1, Subsection 2 of the bill, it reads this way: notwithstanding any other statute or administrative regulation to the contrary, a school district seeking approval by the commissioner for non-traditional instruction plan, so the commissioner is picked by the governor, it's a commissioner of education, of non-traditional instruction plan for the 2021-2022 school year must submit the plan within the district's comprehensive district improvement plan by May 1st, 2021. The plan and number of days shall be subject to approval by the Commissioner of Education. That reads to me like if a school wants to, they can literally just say, I'm going to be NTI all fall long. I'm going to be NTI all 2021 to 22, and then if I go back, I can't. I think it gives them, as I'm reading that, unlimited ability for NTI days next year, and only requires them to, by the end of, I believe, March here, to return to 2 out of 5 days a week. And it is, quite frankly, very, very tone deaf. Do not underestimate what thousands of pissed off parents can do, because pissed off parents make for a good, a real fight as far as it goes. And ignoring these pissed off parents is going to be the death of you. You can maybe get away with saying, well, we'll ignore Brood because, and all those people that follow them and all the people who follow, the school choice groups and all the people who follow the medical freedom groups, we're going to ignore them. They're a fringe. They're crazy, whatever. They're far right, because apparently not wanting higher taxes and personal freedoms now makes me far right, but whatever. Anyways, also probably believe in a lot less gun control than they do. Putting that to the side, however. That makes you far right. Now, thinking that if a governor bans you from going to church, maybe he should be removed from office. That makes you far right. They can be thinking that. However, going back to school is a very neutral topic, and that pisses off a lot of voters. And it is one of the most foolish things you have ever done to piss off parents in such this way. And I tell you what, if those schools use that section to remain NTI next year, you are just, you have put nails in your own coffin at that point. You have decided you don't want to be reelected. I don't know what else to tell you at that point. You really just simply don't want to be reelected. That is crazy to me. But HB 208 passed today, passed the Senate. They don't care. Also, noteworthy, Resolution 77 did pass the House today. What's Resolution 77 do? Well, let me read it to you. Resolution 77 says, be it resolved by the General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, it's very short, the General Assembly hereby approves and ratifies all executive orders issued in response to COVID-19 virus in full and declare that the order shall expire 60 days from the passage of this resolution, whereas the General Assembly desires to ensure the citizens of the Commonwealth are protected for a specific period of time, an emergency is declared to exist, and the resolution takes effect upon its passage and approval by the governor or upon otherwise becoming law. So here's the deal. What's that say? It rubber stamps every single one of the governor's executive orders, says they're okay, stops people from being able to sue on them, and also gives them 60 days to keep extending them. And that's what they just gave him. They passed the House with it. Now, when this first came out, Osborne, who I believe was the Osborne, who's the Speaker of the House, was put under a lot of attack for passing it because obviously it's rubber stamping all the executive orders, and he said it was a shell bill. A shell bill is a bill that they're planning on amending later on, and they're going to fill it up, but there's a bill filing deadline, so they're going to change it up. However, they passed it. It's not a shell bill now. They passed that bill, the House, as a freaking rubber stamp on all his executive orders. And so at this point, they are doing one of two things. In my mind, this is all I can think of they're doing. When I look at them not passing HB 360, which I've already been told they're not doing it because they just hate us. They just hate, like literally us at Brood. They hate us because we're giving them such a hard time. And like I said, if you think for 1 second, there's a lot of danger in this for us because the government can do a lot of things to a person. And I can tell you that much right now. So, but I've been told that's just because they hate us. At this point, they are either doing it because they want to teach now not just us, but everybody a lesson to say, we are your masters. You listen to us. Don't you fall back. Don't you listen. Don't you dare try to challenge us again, because look at how crazy you are for doing this. Look at how crazy you are. Somebody just asked, am I sure Resolution 77 passed the House today? I am pretty positive. That was the news I was given. Of course, it's not an LRC site. I have different people feeding me news from inside the State House. Anyways, if I am wrong on Resolution 77 passing the House, you let me know. But I am almost 100% certain, based upon who told me it passed the House, that it passed the House. Anyway, so back over. I'm sorry, I got off track there. They're doing it because they want to show us they're the boss. We had to listen to them, that, get in line. I can make it much worse for you. I can make it much worse for you. But what they fail to realize is a level of commitment that not just me, but everybody has to this idea that we need to be free again. This isn't an opportunity just to become politically known or to grift or something else. This is literally an opportunity to change our futures, to be freer and stop this sliding into constant and more control. And literally, the whole reason why we started this is because, and the whole reason why I stood up to the health department on that split second when they came in to try to close me down was literally only because at that moment, after I'd lost so much, I just got tired of somebody telling me what I can or can't do with the fruits of my labor. And do not keep pushing us, because at the end of the day, I will dig in. You have no clue the lengths we'll go to. I've already been willing to go to jail to keep the fruits of my labor. And what I mean by that is I'm not going to go commit violence or anything like that. What I'm saying is we don't stop. Don't try thinking I'm just going to pass some bad laws and show them and make their lives miserable, and then they'll be begging me for help. No, we don't fall for that. We don't fall for that. I don't fall for that. It's not what's going to happen. And neither will these people, because they see once you've had the opportunity to fix it and you failed to, it now is your problem. Everything Governor Beshear does from here on out, is your fault, Republicans. You will be blamed for it. Not all Republicans, but there's good ones, trust me. There's 4, 5, 6 very, very good legislators. But to the KY GOP and everything else, this will be your fault. You will go onto their Facebook page, read their comments, comment yourself, tell them, we're not falling for it. We're going to get these candidates in there. It is very clear that people are upset and their eyes are open to this, and it is crazy. And so now, kind of moving on from a little bit of state, a little bit of national news here, but goes into state because there's, I did want to talk about yesterday. They did do something that actually I personally agree with. I'll explain to you why. He stopped a death penalty on people who are mentally not all there, I guess. In general, I'm not a big supporter of the death penalty. Not really even from necessarily a moral standpoint. It's a mixed bag on that. But from a fiscal standpoint, death penalties are very expensive. They're actually more expensive than a person's life in jail. The reason why is because the minute you decide you're going for the death penalty, there's an extensive appeals process that has to occur. And that appeals process is very, very expensive. It is actually more expensive than it is to have them just sit in prison for the rest of their life. It just is. So fiscally speaking, because I'm fiscally conservative and I'm fiscally aware and I want my government saving as much money as possible, it is just more expensive to commit the death penalty. It just is. And so that's a general reason why I don't support it. Now, don't get me wrong. If there's some way you could prove to me beyond a shadow of a doubt this person is guilty of very heinous crimes, I feel you there, and I hear you, and I'm inclined to agree with you. However, fiscally, it just doesn't make sense. That's where I fall on it. So that did get passed yesterday in the House. It got very quietly slipped in there passed. Generally, I'm okay with that, but I just thought that was worth mentioning. So, on to national news. A little bit interesting story I saw, and it deals with the SB8 hearing we're having tomorrow. SB8 is a no-force vaccination bill. It says that employers, governments, things like that can't force you to get a vaccine. And I think that's very important because what we're seeing is D.C., Washington, D.C., had a law that is proposed, working its way through the House there, I guess, that basically would allow anybody over the age of 11 to consent to getting a vaccine without parental consent. And so I don't understand this. So they want to let an 11-year-old decide to get a vaccine. You don't even let an 11-year-old take their inhaler at school without a signed consent form from their parents. And that is an inhaler with their name on it that's already been prescribed to them. And you can't even do that without a consent form. And you want to allow kids that are 11 years old to get a vaccine without their parents' consent? That is super crazy to me. And so that's a bill that's working its way through D.C. Now, am I saying we're going to have that here? No. But, people are a little crazy about this vaccine, and especially based upon once again, this is what I'm told, and I do know some people that are dealing a lot with this vaccine, so they're pretty good on information, giving me information. They definitely do suggest if you are planning on having children again, either, go save that in a freezer somewhere, or at least, or don't get the vaccine because it may make you sterile. I have heard that from a good number of sources, of doctors and things like that. So, but outside of that, like I said, I'm not a doctor. Go do your own research. But anyway, so, and also though, they're very unclear on if this vaccine actually, if it actually stops the spread or if it literally just lessens the symptoms for you. That seems to be an unknown. All they know it's effective at doing something, and they don't really know exactly what it does. It looks like it's effective at stopping the spread because the numbers are going down. However, I think that's kind of a little planned out because they're also cycling at a lower rate. So, probably makes it look a certain way. Also, once you get the vaccine, you don't get the test anymore. So that starts to bring down just naturally the amount of positive tests they're getting. That being stated, forced vaccines, I'm not for it, obviously. Don't like government force when it comes to anything, mass. What you do on your own property, what you do with the fruits of your labor. Obviously, I'm not okay with the government holding you down and forcing something into your body that you don't want in you. That's pretty messed up as far as it goes. In fact, I would say if you look at somebody else and you say, I want to be able to control what you put in your own body in the sense of forcing you to take something, that's pretty messed up. I think you might be an evil human. It doesn't matter if it's for their better good or not. You do not get that much control over a person to pretend for 1 second you can control and force somebody to take something that they don't want to take is to say you own them, and that is morally a corrupt thought process to think you own somebody else. But of course, I would say the same thing about income tax too as well, but it's certainly very messed up. Individuals would be forcing individuals to take vaccines. But we have SB8, which is having a hearing tomorrow at noon in the House. It has already passed the Senate. It has a hearing in the House Health Committee there. And so they're going to be looking at that and deciding if they want to move it forward to the floor. I certainly hope they do. I think not forcing vaccines on people is a really good thing. However, who knows? The House, at this point, they may be like, oh, what's that? They don't want to take a vaccine. Well, we'll go ahead. We'll make it possible. And then when Andy does it, we'll be like, look at what Andy does. Like, we're not going to fall for the fact that you didn't pass it. I don't understand this whole entire process of you thinking we don't know. You're allowing these things to happen. Also, I kind of mentioned this earlier. Any bills, so there's like a mask mandate bill and everything else that they pass. And there is a bill to end the mandate. They could, in the state of emergency, they could just pass that right now too. But any bills not passed by the end of next week that are at all controversial, they didn't plan on passing. They didn't plan on passing it because it is not veto-proof anymore. The way the legislative calendar works out, they've got 10 days to veto, things like that. It is not veto-proof anymore. They can't overcome a veto guaranteed. So any kind of important legislation they pass after Friday, they never meant to pass it. They did it just to say they did something to virtue signal, when all reality what they're doing, they're waving their little white flag around, and they're sitting there saying, hey, we're going to surrender this over to you guys. We want to see Kentuckians suffer because we think it's good for business. Well, we'll see how that works out for you. I think it's a pretty bold move. I don't think it works out for you guys very well, but that's it for me today. There's kind of a daily rundown. A lot of things happened today. Thank you guys so much. Remember, check out our shop. Check out that link there, that link tree I dropped for you guys, shop.broodco.com, and share this out. It's on Spotify too as well. Share it out. Share around. You can donate, whatever you want to do to support. If you don't want to support or if you hate me, that's cool too. I'm glad at least you listened.